Hello! Welcome and welcome back. This channel is Paper, Paint, and Spaceships, where I do whatever catches my fancy that week. Usually that involves noodling with fountain pens, ink, or, like we're doing this week, paper. Ignore the fact that I'm a week and a half behind on this video. It has been a really busy month, and voiceovers are hard. This video is the third installment of my Paper Lab series, where I put a particular type of paper through its paces, with various inks and pens, testing how the paper shows sheen and shading, and how it handles bleed-through and feathering. Today in the hot seat is Rhodia's 80 GSM high-grade vellum paper, which may or may not be coated. The information about that is somewhat conflicting. I am inclined to think that it's uncoated based on how it behaved for the water drop test, but that is really just a guess. I wish I had some way to easily test for coating with my setup at home, but I think I would have to get a really powerful microscope, which I'm not necessarily ruling out, I just don't have one. If it is uncoated, that leaves me absolutely astounded at the water resistance of the paper if it's relying entirely on internal sizing. And quick note, well, not so quick, I guess. If some of these words, like sizing and coating, are not real clear-cut and you think they're a little confusing, you are not alone. I'm still pretty fuzzy on most of it. The only part that I feel like I have a good handle on is the fact that sizing is the literal glue that holds the fibers of the paper together. But I know that sizing has a whole lot of other purposes, and the components of sizing also do a whole lot of other things other than just holding it together. I'm trying to learn more about it, but for some perspective, I have a paper that discusses paper chemistry, coating, and printability, and at some point it talks about Brownian motion, and I think I'm going to need to fortify myself a little bit more before diving into that. So until then, I can't really tell you the difference between surface sizing and coating, or what sizing can be made of to result in paper that shows so little ghosting and feathering and no bleed through. Writing on this paper is mostly a really pleasant experience, especially on the pad. It has a little bit of texture against the nibs I used and feels soft, almost luxurious, which is kind of delightfully at odds with the field note aesthetic that really defines this brand's image, with its perforated, stapled, paper-covered pads. I did say it was a mostly pleasant experience, and this is where some of what I've already said gets real confusing. Every so often, the paper has a sort of slick resistance to the nib that makes me think of writing in clay. Now, clay is a component of some paper coatings, which throws everything I just said about Rhodia maybe not being coated under a big old question mark, though clay can also be a filler, so who knows? But that sensation I'm talking about is one that I associate strongly with Clairefontaine's Triomphe paper, which is owned by the same company and known for its smoothness, and I'm pretty sure that smoothness means it has a coating. but the vellum finish that Rhodia advertises is typically uncoated. So, again, who knows? Now, plenty of people on the internet will be more than happy to tell you confidently that Rhodia paper has a coating and what that coating is, and that it's either terrible or fantastic for your pen and all that jazz, but I'm just not confident in the information that I was able to find either way, so I'm not going to tell you that it definitely is one thing or the other. What I can tell you is that Rhodia paper is definitely not the same paper as Clairefontaine, either their regular paper or the Triomphe paper. This is also something that I have seen people claim on the internet, that the paper is the same because it's owned by the same company, and I can tell you they are definitely not. They feel totally different to write on.
All right, future me here. I started to talk about some of the qualities that I noticed on this paper, and I realized it would be so much easier to have the paper in hand and discuss it than to try and like line up the video with the audio, since I was doing a voiceover. So the first thing I want to mention is that this paper has some pretty great it's 80 GSM, so it's fairly thick when you compare it to something like Tomoe River paper. But when you look at, let's see if we can do this. Yeah, so you see here, you see that the ghosting is pretty minimal. This still might be more than some people are comfortable with, but on these writing sample pages, I didn't notice any bleed through at all. The only bleed through that I really saw was on this page with the Jacques Urban, and it was down here in these teeny tiny dots. And there's a caveat with this, because I was so mad at the Kakuno that I had put the inks in. It just wasn't, it just wasn't working. And so I completely disassembled it. I had it soaking in water, and I needed to proceed with filming the video. So I used my Kakamori. The thing with Kakamori is that, well, the thing with all dip pens really is that, especially the first few lines of it, it is very wet, and it will be a lot more wet in a dip nib than it is in a regular pen. And so down here, especially where I was writing on it with that untipped brass, and there was a lot of ink coming down, of course there was a little bit of bleed through. Like that's almost to be expected. And there's just teeny tiny little specks. And really, that is the only bleed through that I noticed on this paper at all. It performed really well from that perspective. The other thing that I want to talk about, let's see if I can get this close. So this is the first page, right? This is the number one. This is without the influence of hand oils. What are these? These are hands. If you look at the line quality, so you can see a little bit of fuzzing here at the edges. The lines aren't crisp. Let me see if I can find the equivalent on, say, a Tomoe River paper. You can see here that the lines are very crisp, right? They come to a stop, and here they come to a stop. They're just contained. They don't go anywhere. And here it looks like fuzzing, but it's not really like feathering. It's more to do with the texture of the paper. What feathering there is, you don't see on the first page at all. You see it more on the second page, and it is really kind of contained. Like this is as bad as it ever got, right? Like just there at the ends of words, there's a little bit of fuzzing, and this was on the side of the page that I had my hand resting on essentially the whole time. And that's all we had. For comparison, let me pull out the Marimon Mnemosyne. For comparison, the Marimon had a lot harder time with hand oils. I think even on the back, where it would be less pronounced, it still had a lot of fuzzing at the ends of strokes, whereas the Rhodia saw a lot less of that. I mean, you can see just a little here. This is a very poorly behaved ink anyway. You can see just a little there. There's a little bit of fuzzing, but I didn't see any with the what is that pen? That's the Varsity? Yeah, that's the Varsity. I didn't see any with the Varsity writing. Like, if it would show up anywhere, it's going to be something like there, and I don't see any fuzzing. I don't, even here, I don't see any, it looks very well behaved. So it did pretty well. This page is the confusing one, right? So I will show a video here of what the paper looked like with the little beads of water on top. Now, when I did that same test on the Tomoe River paper, it looked very similar. I thought that meant that there was coating on the paper. But after a little while, I started noticing that some of the droplets were deformed a little and seemed to follow along with the strokes of the pen. Now, when this happened on the Marimon Mnemosyne, it happened on the Jacquerbon and the Tsutsuji. It was because the nib of the pen had essentially scratched through the coating and kind of damaged the water resistance of the paper. But you might notice that these look totally different, right? Like even up here, where this pen or this blob is not a perfect circle, like say this one, it's still not like this. It's still really well contained. It's got those crisp edges. It appears as if the paper retained the water resistant qualities. And I think that what happened here is that the water was just kind of following along in the grooves of the marks that I made. And that all of the water resistant sizing, it wasn't a coating, it was sizing that was permeated throughout the breadth of the paper. That is what I think happened. As you can see, let me see if I've got it here. Standards look pretty good. Shading looks pretty good. And shimmer, it's hard to heck up shimmer. But when you start looking at the sheen, this one is, it's there. I can tell you it's there. I just don't know that I can get it on camera. Okay, you see right over here. There we go. So it shows sheen pretty well. But when you look at the polychromatic shaders, let's pull up the Mnemosyne. It's a little bit darker than it is on the Mnemosyne, but these both don't really show much in the way of shading. Like this is what this is what it looks like on Tomoe River paper. You've got the blue, you've got the kind of teal over here, there's purple, and on Rhodia it's just purple. So I think that there are definitely inks that behave better on this paper. Tsutsuji, like sheeners work well, shaders work well. It's really great for super wet inks, as you can see. But if you have a polychromatic shader, just maybe pick another paper. Yeah. All right. So that is what I have to say about Rhodia paper. I will comment before I end this that Rhodia does have a premium paper. This is not that. This is just their basic vellum, high-grade vellum paper, which, as best as I can tell, is uncoated. I'm not, I wish I knew how to tell. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. These paper videos are a large chunk of what I try and do. I enjoy making them. I enjoy using paper. I enjoy talking about paper. And I will see you hopefully soon. I'm hoping it won't be another almost 2 weeks. So everyone have a wonderful day. Bye.